This screencast is about tense and aspect. What is the difference between tense and aspect? Tense expresses time, past, present, and future, though the future is not technically considered a tense because we use modals in English rather than changing the verb. For most purposes, it is categorized with tense. Aspect reflects the speaker's view of the action: complete, incomplete, repetitive, ongoing, or regular. Forms of the English system of tense and aspect that are commonly accepted and used in grammar textbooks and by teachers are the following: the simple tenses, present, past, and future; those with progressive aspect; those with perfect aspect; and those with perfect progressive aspect. Let's take a closer look at each of these four categories. Core meanings and uses of English tenses and aspects. Let's begin with simple tenses. The most common uses are these four: states, habitual actions, general statements of fact, and future action. Some additional uses include conversational historical present, narrative present, stage and screenplay directions, communication verbs, reported speech, unreal conditionals, and polite requests and questions. Now let's look at the progressive aspect. It is formed with be plus the present participle, or the base form of the verb plus ing, to express ongoing action in the past, present, or future. Some examples would be: he is, or was, or will be running for state's attorney. Additional meanings include expressing planned future events: he's flying to Paris tomorrow. Expressing habitual actions: they're always sending invitations to these fundraisers. Hedging or softening a definitive opinion: I'm thinking I should probably pass on that. Expressing emotional intensity: this is costing the company an arm and a leg. Or to convey informal, polite tone. We're hoping you can help us resolve this issue. Next, let's consider the perfect aspect. This is formed with have plus the past participle and combined with past, present, and future tense to express a situation that started in the past and continues to the present. For example, I've been living in Greece for 10 years. For recently completed actions, she has just won the lottery. An action that occurred at a specific time that has current relevance, such as he has read every one of Shakespeare's plays. With activity involving inherent change, it expresses an action that occurred over a period of time completed at the time of speaking. The value of that stock has tripled in the last year. And for the past perfect, the perfect aspect is used to talk about a past event completed prior to another past event or time, and for the future perfect to talk about a future event that will be completed prior to another future event or time. Finally, we can combine the perfect and progressive aspects with past, present, and future time. The present perfect progressive expresses ongoing past action that continues up to the present. It often uses for or since. An example would be: he has been taking lessons for about 3 weeks. The past perfect progressive expresses a past ongoing action that happens prior to another past action or time. A subordinate clause using, for example, when, can mark a past action that is in some way related. So she had been driving for about 45 minutes when she realized that she had forgotten her phone. The future perfect progressive expresses an action that will happen in the future up to a specific time, frequently indicated with when or by the time. So, when they finally reach their destination, they will have been walking for almost 4 hours. Some minimal pairs of tenses include the future perfect and future perfect progressive. The former expresses an action that will have been completed by a certain time, whereas the latter expresses an action that will have been ongoing. The simple past and past progressive: the former expresses an action completed in the past, and the latter expresses an action that was ongoing. These minimal pairs represent differences in meaning with regards to time or the view of action. Here's an example with a difference in meaning in terms of politeness or another function. The simple present and simple past. If we contrast, I want to ask you a favor, and I wanted to ask you a favor, there's technically a difference in terms of time, but the more material difference is the level of courtesy perceived in each expression. Even though the person asking for the favor probably still wants it in the present, to ask using the second construction is generally considered to be more polite. Let's also consider the lexical aspect. There are 4 types of lexical aspects to be considered. The first is stative. It describes states or situations rather than actions and can commonly be used with the verbs hope, need, contain, know, resemble, or similar. Activity, achievement, and accomplishment verbs are all considered to be dynamic because they require some type of action. An activity verb describes actions that go on for a potentially indefinite period of time, such as develop, grow, sit, or work. Achievement verbs describe actions that happen instantaneously, such as turn on the light, spot a rare creature. Accomplishment verbs have a termination that is logical in terms of their action, such as finish a novel, build a stadium, and usually these occur in a certain amount of time. So how can teachers help students to notice the distinction between tenses and use them meaningfully and appropriately? You can see on this chart that we have aspect and tense. If you were to share a resource like this with your students, they might be able to have a quick reference in terms of function and form. Some additional suggestions include exposing students to structure in written or verbal form prior to explicit grammar instruction, helping them to associate the form with meaning by using each construction in a relevant and engaging way, teaching students to recognize patterns or components like adverbs of frequency that can help them identify the most appropriate tense or aspect, and reinforcing the lexical aspects. Expect students to have the greatest facility with achievement and accomplishment verbs, then stative verbs, and then activity verbs, and support them accordingly, particularly with the last 2. So what challenges do L2 learners face in learning the English system of tense and aspect, and what errors are typical? Often you will find that they substitute progressive forms with stative verbs, and bare infinitive and simple present tense forms with activity verbs. They may omit tense endings on stative verbs, or fail to identify frequency adverbs as clues indicating the need for a past tense form. They may also erroneously use or fail to use a given structure because of its similarity or difference to the tense that would be used in the speaker's L1. Here are a few examples of that last one. In L1, for Chinese speakers, they do not mark the tense on verbs. Rather, they tend to add an additional word to mark the tense. The L1 requires a different tense with equivalent English time expressions, like in German. L1 has 1 tense corresponding to 2 tenses in English, in German also, and the reverse, where the L1 has 2 possibilities where English has only 1. The L1 tense transfers throughout discourse. The L1 choice differs in complex sentences, or there are difficulties with sequence of tense rules. There may also be a lack of backshifting in complements. If you're aware of these common sources of confusion and you know your students' L1, maybe you can identify some of the ways where you can offset this confusion. These are the sources that were consulted. Thank you.